blazing fires, raging adrenaline, and total anarchy, all within the walls of a federal prison. FBI tactical teams and negotiators work around the clock, trying to avoid a small-scale war and keep nearly 100 hostages alive.
In the 1980s, the federal penitentiary in Atlanta housed some of the country's most notorious prisoners. 1,800 Cubans fleeing Castro's regime. 400 were hardened criminals. 200 were insane. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. Castro called them undesirables. The U.S. government called them detainees. In 1987, they staged a bloody revolt. Now the FBI and special operations teams must infiltrate a burning prison to stop the violence before it rages out of control.
Cuba, 1980. A plummeting economy and political unrest prompt Fidel Castro to allow Cuban citizens to leave the country. For the first time in history, the notorious dictator permits American boats to enter Cuba's Mariel Harbor. In a 5-month period, over 120,000 undocumented refugees flee the country, heading for Florida. 2,700 are considered criminals or mentally ill under U.S. law. The Attorney General instructs the Bureau of Prisons to find space for them in America's already overcrowded prison system. 1,000 Cuban refugees are sent to the Federal Detention Center in Oakdale, Louisiana. Nearly 1,400 are transported to the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. For 7 years, the U.S. and Cuban governments negotiate to send the criminals and mentally ill refugees back to Cuba. On November 20th, 1987, the State Department strikes a treaty with Cuba. Over 2,700 Cuban detainees will be sent back. Within 24 hours, Cuban detainees in both prisons get news of the decision. In Oakdale, Louisiana, 1,000 of them riot, taking 28 prison guards hostage. But at the Atlanta Penitentiary, all is quiet. Warden Joe Petrovsky.
There was a trust between the detainees and the correctional officers, and that trust was basically the treatment that the detainees got from the correctional officers.
Early Monday morning, 3 days after the treaty is signed, prison employee Ted Manier arrives at work. He notices an eerie silence.
There were hardly any inmates in the breakfast area. And normally it would be full of inmates were making a lot of noise and talking, and there was hardly anybody in there, so it was really quiet, unusually quiet.
On the first floor of the Prison Industries building, detainees make mattresses. On the surface, it looks like business as usual. But in an instant, detainees overpower their guards and ignite fires. On the third floor of the Industries building, Manier and his supervisor oversee a furniture-making shop. In a matter of minutes, the riot spreads to the rest of the floors.
It sounded like a roar, and it was coming up the stairwell. they got the door down. And they just came running in. And they had these hoods over their head, like they were made out of gray T-shirts or gray sweatshirts. And they just had holes poked out for their eyes so they could see.
Munir tries to report the emergency, but he is attacked by one of the rioters.
And I don't know if he was trying to hit me or just the telephone out of my hand. He knocked the phone out of my hand that went across the room.
Prison employees are facing their worst nightmare. Although they are well aware of the risks, they never thought it would happen to them.
But we did realize there was a threat, but I guess you think you can control it. When you work with inmates, you get used to them, and sometimes you forget who they really are.
The guards and factory workers are helpless. Unarmed and outnumbered, they face rioters carrying homemade weapons. The staff member notifies Warden Petrovsky of the crisis.
Inside the wall, nobody carried weapons. The inmates always vastly outnumbered the staff. So if we had weapons in there, we could lose those weapons. The only weapons that we had was weapons in the tower.
Petrovsky alerts the FBI and the prison's regional director.
I try to give him an assessment of exactly what transpired and brought him up to date.
As fire spreads throughout the industries building, the detainees force the guards and employees into a tool cage and lock the door.
We kind of thought that unless there was some miracle, that we would probably just burn up, because there's no way to get out of one of the cages.
The riot spreads throughout the entire penitentiary complex. Enraged detainees capture guards, taking keys as they take hostages. They begin to release the regular prison population from their cells. The riot is beyond containment. The detainees now control most of the central buildings. Rioters attempt to gain access to the main cell block, but guards lock down the sally port just in time. As flames and smoke engulf the massive prison complex, nearly 100 guards and employees are trapped inside. Built at the turn of the century, the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary is the largest penitentiary in the United States.
It was a fortress inside that was surrounded by a wall. It raised from the ground approximately 40 feet, and the width on the top of the wall was approximately 3 yards wide. So it was a massive, massive wall.
Show me what you got.
The penitentiary is built on 300 acres of land, with 28 acres of property inside the walls.
Okay, well, we've got guards.
Warden Petrovsky needs to figure out exactly where his people are located inside the complex.
We had staff members in 11 towers that had very good observation over the entire outside compound, who logged those employees that they recognized in those areas. We started a list of the officers that we thought were hostages.
Ted Munir and his colleagues are trapped inside an equipment cage in the burning industries building. Several rioters try to convince the Cuban detainees guarding the cage to unlock the door.
They were trying to talk the guard into opening the door because they wanted to get us out and kill us or do whatever. So the guard had to tell them that they couldn't open the door, and occasionally they would push one off for getting a little wrestle.
But the raging fire threatens to destroy the building. So the rioters are forced to move their hostages to another part of the prison complex. The only route takes them across the yard in clear view of the towers. A tower guard spots what he believes are detainees threatening prison employees.
There was a guy that was up ahead of me, and he got hit. I remember seeing him. He was a Cuban. He got hit right behind the ear.
One of the hostage takers is killed, and 5 others are wounded.
I was getting worried because the bullets were going pretty close around where we were.
Chaos reigns as guards and detainees run for cover.
They ran us across to the corner of the building where they couldn't shoot at us. And that time they took us in the chapel.
Detainees force their hostages into a small room and lock them inside. Less than an hour after the riots begin, FBI agents from the Atlanta field office arrive at the penitentiary. The FBI has jurisdiction over criminal matters in all federal prisons. Warden Petrovsky briefs Weldon Kennedy, the special agent in charge.
The first thing that I wanted to accomplish was to find out how many hostages had been taken, how many might be injured, what was the threat to those people who were in fact taken hostage. All of these people were like on an emotional high. I mean, they'd been prisoners for literally 8-10 years. Some of them serving life sentences, and now they're free to roam around the prison. It was like a holiday.
This is the area where they...
Agent Leon Blakeney heads the Atlanta FBI SWAT team. Agent Blakeney appears in silhouette to protect his identity.
Nobody really knew what area that the inmates controlled, and they really didn't know how many hostages were taken.
You had 2,500 people housed in that institution.
Here's the administration.
There were people running around all over the place, and quite frankly, it was chaos.
Chaos that had already turned deadly. As agents Kennedy and Blakeney develop their plan to retake the prison, they receive critical intelligence from 2 sources. From FBI agents posted outside the walls of the prison complex, and from prisoners inside the walls who don't want any part of the riot.
We began to learn who the hostages might be, where the detainees were holding up, how many were there, what kind of weapons they might have.
The detainees have taken the guards' radios, compromising prison communications. Agents and guards switch to a secure frequency.
2 white males and 2 black males.
The situation is grim. Negotiations will be critical to resolving the standoff. Special Agent D. Rosario, an FBI negotiator, opens up a dialogue with the rioters.
Unreasonable demands are being made. The hostage takers want things done now. And that's why it is so important to try to bring them down to a level where they can be reasonable. Can you negotiate with people at that very high emotional level? Generally speaking, no. So we had to give it time.
The rioters are emotionally charged, angry over the shooting death of a detainee.
This theme came up time and again. You killed one of ours. You had no reason to, and you killed him. And they wanted me to see the bodies, so I had the body brought out to where we were. I looked at the body. They wanted me to get emotionally involved with it. And these 4 that originally came out to talk to me really were only speaking for themselves. They were not speaking on behalf of the 1,400 that were in there.
In the command post, Warden Petrovsky receives a frantic call from 16 employees who have barricaded themselves in cell block E. E block is home to the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary's most dangerous criminals.
these particular group of inmates were locked away in E to keep them from harming someone.
If the detainees get into cell block E and free the inmates, the lives of all 16 employees will be in danger. The E cell block is also home to the prison system's most notorious inmate, Thomas Silverstein.
A number of people in the Bureau of Prisons told me that he singularly was the toughest prisoner they believed that the Bureau of Prisons had ever housed or had in their custody. He was just an absolute animal, and he hated everything to do with the Bureau of Prisons or any of their staff.
Silverstein was incarcerated in 1975 for a bank robbery. Years later, he was sentenced to multiple life terms for fatally stabbing an inmate and a prison guard.
Thomas Silverstein was cold and he was a killer. He had two things on his mind: to escape from jail because his crimes were such where he was going to die in jail. And the other objective was to kill people. It was as simple as that.
The guards in cell block E are in grave danger. Special Agent Kennedy works with the FBI SWAT team to come up with a plan to rescue them.
The SWAT analysis was that they believed that they could go over the wall out of view of the rioting detainees and retrieve those people out of that building successfully.
The SWAT team will need ladders to get over the 40-foot-high wall. Special Agent Blakeney calls on the Atlanta Fire Department and a National Guard helicopter crew to help carry out the plan.
We put a helicopter up on the opposite side of the prison to attract their attention, and at least we have some diversion.
Chief, here's the situation. We've got a hostage crisis.
7 hours after the riot began, the FBI SWAT team launches a daring mission to rescue 16 prison employees without endangering the lives of nearly 100 hostages.
Okay, listen, we need to put a truck up on the southwest corner for the ladder. Everybody got it?
7 hours after a riot breaks out at Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, an FBI SWAT team launches a mission to rescue 16 employees barricaded in one of the prison's cell blocks. FBI Special Agent Weldon Kennedy knows that if the rescue attempt is seen by rioting Cuban detainees, it could spell disaster.
They would not hesitate to kill hostages if it became apparent to them that we were going to try to retake the prison or retake any part of it.
After scaling the wall, the FBI SWAT team approaches cell block E, home to the prison's most dangerous inmates.
Guard, come out, guard! Guard, now!
SWAT rushes the prison employees out of the building.
Keep your head down. Identify yourself when you get down there.
Across the prison yard, 27 employees, afraid for their safety, have barricaded themselves inside the prison hospital. Frustrated, they watch as their colleagues are escorted to safety. FBI SWAT team leader Leon Blakeney.
You know, they're screaming, frantic, you know, come and get us, come and get us.
The director of the Bureau of Prisons urges the FBI SWAT team to go back for the hospital employees.
The SWAT personnel informed me that there was a 100% probability that they would be detected going over the wall to try to effect a rescue of the hospital people.
We can't protect the other hostages that are being held in other parts of the prison. And my concern was if in fact we were observed, then they would start killing the other employees.
Blakeney wants to rescue the hospital staff, but knows it's a risk he cannot afford. The detainees break into cell block E and release the inmates. Vicious criminals run free, including Thomas Silverstein, a ruthless killer. As darkness falls, 3 buildings have been consumed by fire. Nearly 100 guards and employees have been taken hostage or have barricaded themselves inside the prison. Prison employee Ted Manier is being held inside a room in the prison's chapel.
So a man came up to the window, and he wasn't a Cuban. And the guy beside me said, "That's Silverstein." And he came inside, and he had a flashlight, and he started shining his flashlight. He shined the light on me, said, "Don't I know you?" And I told him, "No." I said, "I've never seen you before." And he said, "You don't know who I am?" He looked worse than anything I've ever seen in any type of movie or anything. And when you look at him, you know he isn't a normal. There's something strange about him. He's really scary.
Detainees finally distract Silverstein and he leaves without harming the hostages. On day 2 of the standoff, FBI Tactical Commander Danny Colson arrives at the prison.
You could hear this huge roar. It was like 1,000,000 bumblebees. You could almost feel the energy of those rioting prisoners.
Colson started the FBI's hostage rescue team, an elite counterterrorism group in 1982. The HRT is law enforcement's equivalent to the Navy SEALs or the Army's Delta Force.
The only unit in the United States that has a sophisticated explosive or thermal breaching capability is the FBI's hostage rescue team.
But the HRT is already tied up, handling the riot at Oakdale.
So I was going to a very difficult tactical assignment without the team I was used to commanding.
Despite not having the hostage rescue team available to him, Colson must still develop a full-scale tactical rescue plan. He faces several obstacles.
A prison is built to keep bad guys in. You have barred doors, you have steel gates. Well, these same type of things keep a rescue force from getting in. I needed help from the military, primarily from the Delta Force.
Delta Force is the Army's Special Operations Unit, but using them at the prison would be illegal.
A posse comitatus law was passed right after the Civil War, and that law prevents the military from being involved actively with their personnel in civil law enforcement.
Barring approval from the White House, the FBI must rely solely on civilian law enforcement. Weldon Kennedy assembles over 400 SWAT members at the prison.
We had SWAT teams from all around the country, Chicago, New York, as well as, of course, the immediate surrounding area.
We figured that based on the capability we had, we were probably maybe an hour away from getting in to rescue the hostages. We were all concerned that they started killing hostages. We were helpless to get in there. And that's one of the reasons that De Rosario and the other negotiators were working so hard to try to get somebody to talk to calm the situation down.
But the negotiations are not going well. None of the rioters De Rosario has spoken with has enough power to influence the detainees. The negotiators need a different approach.
We could be here for a very long time unless we come up with a group of people in there among the detainees that can speak basically for, if not all of them, for the majority.
Rosario asks prison employees which detainees command the most respect.
Files of these people were opened to us, and we looked at several of them, and we decided on 5 or 6 men. We went to the grating and called them by name, and they came to the grating, and we invited them to come over to our side and sit down at a table with us and talk with us.
The detainees agree to talk with negotiators.
And we began our first serious conversations in terms of how can we resolve this? What is it that you're looking for? The number one demand that they had was that ultimately the Immigration and Naturalization Service conduct individual hearings for each and every one of them to remain in the United States.
It's a straightforward request. Rosario agrees to pass it on to the Department of Justice. As the meeting ends, the negotiator uses a bit of psychology to help solidify the group's standing as leaders within the prison.
We decided to give these men the mail that had accumulated since before the riot began.
In the penitentiary, daily mail is an important link to the outside world.
They went back in there, and we could literally hear the shouting of glee when these guys showed up with 2 bags full of mail. We believe it created in the minds of the others that these guys could get things done for them. And that's where it began. After that, we kept asking for the same men.
Rosario is beginning to make progress, but negotiations go slowly. In the prison hospital, 27 trapped employees are out of time. Detainees are trying to break down the door of the hospital with a battering ram. The employees call Warden Petrovsky in the command center. Warden Petrovsky relays the information to Weldon Kennedy. Detainees could break through the hospital doors at any moment.
We had 27 people in there, and there was concern that once the hospital was taken over, they might be injured or even killed. So the ram is going, we can hear it as a matter of fact, banging the metal doors of the prison.
Bureau of Prison officials worry about what could happen if detainees get access to the drugs and narcotics stored in the hospital.
What about right here?
Weldon Kennedy asks HRT Commander Danny Colson for a second assessment.
I said, yeah, we can get them out. We can go over the wall. We can defend the area with a perimeter and slide them out over the walls, and we're out of there.
Colson's biggest concern is that the detainees are watching news coverage of the riots.
Inmates were watching TV to see what we were doing as much as they could. And they could very well believe that a rescue of the entire prison was underway, and then they could start executing the hostages.
Hospital workers are moments away from becoming hostages, or worse.
So here we have a huge dilemma. Do we go in and take those people out of the hospital and save them, or do we let them be taken hostage?
Kennedy decides a rescue is too risky.
My decision was based on all the information that I had. We will not go for the rescue. I will not authorize the rescue.
And when he went back in and announced it to the Bureau of Prisons, I remember one Bureau of Prisons official storming past me and looking at me and said, if those are FBI agents, you'd go get them. And I said, no, he wouldn't.
Weldon Kennedy wonders if he has just signed a death warrant for 27 innocent people. For 2 days, a riot rages at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. Dozens of Cuban detainees now control the prison. 27 Bureau of Prison employees are trapped in the prison hospital. Weldon Kennedy, special agent in charge of the FBI's Atlanta field office, makes a tough decision.
If we entered the penitentiary, if we tried to retake it, there was a threat they were going to immediately kill them all.
Kennedy decides not to launch a rescue mission. 2 hours after the decision, communication is lost with the employees in the prison hospital.
It's the warden. Pick up if you hear me.
I knew that if anything happened to any one of those 27 people, that I would forever live with that as being the person responsible.
Guards stationed at the prison towers gather intelligence as detainees move hostages across the prison yard. One guard calls the FBI command post with a disturbing development. A group of detainees is dragging acetylene tanks into a basement where they can access the prison's utility tunnels. Danny Colson is the FBI's tactical commander at the scene.
They might be able to bring those tanks, get enough of them underneath our command post where the tunnels ran, and cause an explosion which would have decimated the command post and maybe have allowed them to escape.
Colson and the FBI SWAT team prepare to go down into the tunnels.
The tunnels were designed for two purposes. One is all the utilities went through the tunnels, the steam pipes, the electrical pipes, and they were big tunnels. There were also ventilation tunnels that started big enough for a man to walk in standing up and ended up only a few inches high.
Colson and SWAT team leader Leon Blakeney have no idea what they will encounter once they are inside. Prison maps aren't reliable, and communication with agents above ground is not possible. As the team makes their way through the underground maze of pipes, they encounter a group of detainees. Leon Blakeney.
Once we got in the tunnels, we discovered then that in fact the Cubans were in there.
And oftentimes we'd come in very close proximity to them, within 10 feet of them. There would be a bunch of them, and we'd confront them, and fortunately, every time they'd turn around and run.
The SWAT team is unable to find the acetylene tanks in the vast underground system, but they are convinced the detainees are exploring the tunnels for a possible escape route.
We decided that the tunnel system was a real threat to the successful resolution of the crisis.
Ultimately, we were able to station SWAT teams down there. The Chicago SWAT team handled one part of the tunnel system, and the Washington Field Office SWAT team handled another part of the tunnel system.
On day 3 of the standoff, Danny Colson receives intelligence from agents with high-powered binoculars positioned around the prison. The detainees have moved nearly all the hostages to a building known as the American Dorm. Colson begins to formulate a tactical rescue plan.
What do you think they mean? What can it...
Outside the prison, crowds gather. Families of the hostages, the prison guards, and even the detainees wait for information about their loved ones. The media covers breaking news from the penitentiary.
There was hundreds of media people there. There were networks. There was local TV. They established a tent city right across the street from the prison.
A single reporter and a simple error threatened to bring the standoff to a violent end. Special Agent D. Rosario.
The New York SWAT team was coming off shift, and the Chicago SWAT team was coming on shift, and they passed each other right at the steps of the administration building. And it looked impressive because there was two very large groups of armed men, all dressed in black.
A local reporter in Atlanta is watching this and sees these 40 or 50 men dressed in SWAT gear going up the front steps, and jumps to the conclusion and says so on live TV that, well, there they go. Looks like the FBI is going to retake control of the prison.
When the detainees see the media report, they take immediate action.
They brought several hostages out to the yard. And for the benefit of our cameras, so we could see them, they brought these hostages out and they poured gasoline over them. And then they took their cigarette lighters and began clicking while literally screaming at us, "If you want to assault us, go ahead. As soon as you do, we're setting fire to these men."
Without knowing it, a young journalist may have just made a mistake that could cost the lives of nearly 100 innocent people. At the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, FBI agents negotiate with Cuban detainees who have taken over the prison. The lives of nearly 100 hostages hang in the balance. On day 3 of the standoff, a journalist's error ignites a crisis. FBI Tactical Commander Danny Colson.
All along, our negotiators have been telling the Cubans that we weren't coming in, that we wanted to negotiate and wanted them to surrender. And now a reporter is saying we're coming in.
The erroneous media report makes Special Agent D. Rosario's job even tougher as he negotiates for the lives of the hostages.
We had brought them down to such a reasonable level of emotion, and when they thought that the FBI was about to assault, they literally lost it.
We came literally within a few heartbeats of losing the hostages right then and there.
We sent everybody to what we call phase line green, which is the last position you are in before you do a rescue. It was like a spark that was about to ignite this terrible inferno of energy we had built up there.
I had to convince them that no such assault was going to take place, and that, you know, if things were going so well and so positive, why would we even think about assaulting them?
After 3 tense hours, the rioters agree to continue negotiations and spare the hostages.
We're just lucky that our negotiators were able to calm them down and we didn't have any loss of life.
For Colson, the close call is a warning sign that the standoff could explode into a full-scale riot with very little provocation. At the end of day 3, he obtains presidential approval to deploy Delta Force in a civilian crisis. The Special Operations Team arrives in Atlanta disguised as FBI agents.
There were 3 things that I desperately needed from them. The first was their breaching capability. They had all the breaching capability that would be necessary to get back into that prison to do a dynamic rescue. They had the ability to use explosives to blow steel doors down or blow locks out. They had the ability to use thermal devices to cut in an instant through steel and cable. The second thing I wanted was their sniper capability. When we went into that prison, if we had to go in, I wanted the very best snipers I could find doing cover for my men as they went in. The other thing is they have tremendous medical capability.
They travel with a complete hospital. They set up with the doctors, nurses, emergency equipment, the latest state-of-the-art everything.
If Delta Force or FBI teams engage the detainees in combat, the military hospital is prepared to treat any injury.
They can bring their doctors right in with us. They can pop a chest and do open heart surgery right there in the premises if necessary.
For the next several days, Delta Force snipers keep the detainees under constant surveillance. The rioters are working 24 hours a day, making weapons by the thousands.
There was all kinds of steel inside the prison, and they were very resourceful with the equipment. They ground weapons into spears. Each one of them must have had at least 2 weapons.
Delta Force sets up surveillance cameras all over the complex to track the movement of the detainees. Agents look for ways to get closer to the areas where the hostages are being held. If the Cuban detainees decide to kill the hostages, the tactical team must be able to launch an assault on a moment's notice.
We've got 2 people guarding the American dorm.
This is not something where you play a video game and after it's over, you hit your reset button and everybody's alive again. You're talking about the lives of human beings here, and you have a tremendous responsibility to try to get those people out.
Colson and Blakeney go back into the tunnels underneath the prison. One of the tunnels leads to the prison's electrical room. It's located right outside the American dorm, where most of the hostages are held.
We were literally on the other side of the window from inmates that were right across the walkway from where the hostages were being held. By doing that, we moved our response time from half an hour to 10 seconds. It was a tremendous leap in our capability at that point.
With the FBI SWAT teams and Delta Force in place, they will be in a better position to protect the hostages if negotiations break down.
Until they start harming a hostage, there's no reason for us to try to gain forcible entry to save these people. We therefore will wait as long as it takes.
The rioters have enough food to survive for up to a year. The day after Thanksgiving, they erect a Christmas tree on the roof of the building.
That was very disheartening to us. Maybe they didn't intend it psychologically to be that way. We interpret it as, we are going to be here through Christmas.
On day 8 of the crisis, prison guards stationed in the tunnel hear the sound of a drill. One guard recognizes the voice of Thomas Silverstein, the most vicious inmate in the federal prison system. They think Silverstein is searching for a way out.
We knew he would absolutely kill a hostage if it would help him escape.
Weldon Kennedy asks Danny Colson to go back into the tunnels to apprehend Silverstein.
So we walked down the tunnel and we did a tactical formation going down the tunnel. We had lights on our weapons. Suddenly we noticed there was water on the floor, and then the water started getting deeper, and it was over the tops of our shoes and then over our ankles and up to our knees. Then what we finally realized is that that tunnel was actually flooded.
The water flooding the tunnels had been dumped by National Guard helicopters to fight the fires. Looking further into the tunnel, he can see water fills it to the ceiling. He knows there is no way Thomas Silverstein can be in there.
And what they were hearing was there were tubes, ventilation tubes, that were above the water line. So the guards were actually hearing his voice, but we knew he wasn't going to get out.
Still, Colson knows that Silverstein is as dangerous inside the prison as he is on the outside.
He was a sociopath, and he'd proven he would commit murder. So had he done that, had he attempted to harm a guard or anybody else in there, it would have caused us to have to go in and launch a rescue we didn't want to have to launch. And then again, we were faced with significant loss of life.
Knowing Thomas Silverstein is such a dangerous wild card, FBI negotiator D. Rosario must convince the detainees to turn him over.
United States, okay?
I emphasized and kept re-emphasizing the fact that Tommy Silverstein could become a very grave liability to the Cuban detainees and to their cause and to what they were trying to attain. I was told that they would think about it.
Rosario tells the rioters that until Silverstein is back behind bars, the hostages are in grave danger. As long as the vicious killer roams free, the standoff could come to a sudden and violent end. More than a week into the intense standoff with Cuban detainees at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary, FBI negotiators worry that a dangerous American prisoner could jeopardize a peaceful end to the conflict.
What I suggested to them was that at some point or another, it would be in your best interest to turn Tommy Silverstein over to us.
Special Agent D. Rosario tries to convince the rioters that Silverstein is a serious threat to prison employees who are being held hostage. The American inmate is jeopardizing their position in the negotiations. A short time later, a large group of detainees appears at the Sallyport gate of the main cell block.
And there was about 100 Cubans screaming, waving their sabers in the air. And I could see they had Silverstein. And in the midst of all these screaming Cubans, they literally threw Silverstein at us.
Detainees tell agents how they captured Silverstein.
So they gained access to the pharmacy. They took some narcotic. They put it in a can of fruit cocktail, which he was known to like, and fed him fruit cocktail laced liberally with this drug, which in effect knocked him out.
The FBI viewed Silverstein's capture as an act of good faith.
That told us a lot. They don't want to hurt the hostages.
It showed the negotiators that these Cubans were responsible. They were willing to do things to cooperate with us in order to reach a common goal, which is a great step in any negotiation process.
On December 1st, a separate riot at Louisiana's Oakdale Penitentiary is resolved. The Cuban detainees incarcerated at Oakdale agree to release their hostages if the INS will review their cases.
The government of the United States, through the voice of the Attorney General, told them, you know, it's not unreasonable to give you a hearing.
D. Rosario offers the Atlanta detainees the same deal. The hostage takers have gotten exactly what they want, but still, negotiations stall. Audio surveillance reveals the rioters think the FBI will not use deadly force to remove them from the prison, that they would have a fighting chance to overpower federal forces.
The Cubans thought that the FBI and the other assets would come in with nightsticks and batons and just duke it out.
The next day, Colson decides to send the hostage takers an indelible message. The detainee agrees to talk with Colson.
And he said, I need to go to the restroom. So I said, wait right here. So I went around the barrier and I got the Marshall's SOG team and the New York City SWAT team. I got them all up and I said, put on all your gear and line up along the walls and look mean. And he walked around that barricade, and when he walked down that corridor, he literally jumped off the ground. And I said, this is not going to be a nightstick duel with your swords. We're going to use deadly force.
The rioters agree to the terms of the surrender. On day 12 of the standoff, the Cuban detainees release their hostages.
I will never, ever forget those guys coming through that sally port and walking right by me, and the look of relief. They were haggard and they were tired and they were worn out, but this great sense of relief, and they were all smiling ear to ear.
When we finally walked out with hostages, not one of them having been harmed in any way, we regarded that as a huge success.
After 12 intense days, the Atlanta prison riot is over.
One of the most important things, it sort of focused the American public on the plight of the Cubans. And I think that was important. They did have a story to tell. They just told it in the wrong way.
After the riots, all detainees are granted an INS hearing. Some are released. Others with criminal records or mental disabilities are repatriated back to Cuba. The rest remain in prison. In Beirut, armed extremists seize a plane to make a political statement. They terrorize the crew and passengers, including 2 U.S. citizens. As attacks increase against Americans abroad, the FBI and the CIA undertake a daring operation to arrest a hijacker and to send a powerful message to terrorists everywhere.
1980s, the United States faced a deadly new enemy abroad, an expanding network of terrorists targeting American interests. Hundreds of innocent people were killed in bombings, executions, and hijackings. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. As the violence escalated, the U.S. government responded with new laws that gave the FBI broader powers to go after these radical extremists. This is the story of one of the FBI's first cases in the war on terrorism, a war that started long before September 11th.
Hi there. How are you doing today?
Thank you.
14. Enjoy your flight.
June 11th, 1985.
You're in seat 12A. Hi there.
66 passengers, including an American university professor and his son, board Royal Jordanian Air Flight 402 from Beirut, Lebanon to Amman, Jordan. A gang of heavily armed terrorists overpowers the passengers and crew. They force flight attendants to identify undercover sky marshals to prevent them from intervening. The lead hijacker forces his way into the cockpit and orders the crew to take off. Once in the air, he demands that the captain fly to Tunis. The captain does not speak Arabic. His co-pilot translates. The hijacker wants to force a meeting with the Lebanese ambassador and the chairman of the Arab League, Chadley Khalibi. The goal, to make demands, including the removal of 20,000 Palestinians from Lebanon. As the plane flies toward Tunis, the terrorists beat and torture the sky marshals. They appear to have complete control until the aircraft finally enters Tunisian airspace. Former member of the FBI's International Terrorism Squad, Special Agent Tom Hansen.
They were denied landing authority, and in fact, the Tunisian authorities blocked the runways with fuel and water trucks. The main hijacker had conversations over the aircraft radio with the tower. This went back and forth for an extended period of time, and he was simply unable to break the Tunisian will to allow the aircraft to land.
Unable to force a meeting with Arab League Chairman Chadley Khalibi, the hijacker reads his statement to the control tower. The aircraft continues to circle the Tunis airport, becoming dangerously low on fuel. The pilot convinces the lead hijacker that to avoid crashing, they must fly to Palermo, Italy to refuel.
We're dangerously low on fuel. We're going to land in Palermo.
Flight 402 approaches the Italian airport, but the captain cannot land. The runways there are also blocked. He informs the air traffic control that they must either allow the plane to land or clean up the wreckage. The tower finally complies.
Okay.
Once they are on the ground, the hijackers demand that the plane be refueled. Airport authorities at Palermo refuse. The Italians stall for time with a simple deception.
They notified the flight deck that they had notified the Arab League and that they were making all attempts and felt confident that they could get Chadley Khalibi to travel from Tunis to Palermo to meet with the hijackers.
The hijacker is suspicious. Why would Chadley Khalibi travel to Palermo when he refused to meet him at Tunis airport? After an hour of waiting, the hijacker tells the tower that he will throw 2 children from the plane if airport authorities do not send out a refueling truck.
Okay.
10 minutes later, Flight 402 is refueled and heading back to Tunis. For the second time in one day, the plane circles above Tunis International Airport. The captain tells the tower that the hijacker wants to read his statement on Tunisian radio, a state-run network. The air traffic controller responds that they cannot patch him through. They don't have the equipment.
Listen, he doesn't even speak English, okay?
To appease the hijacker, the captain lies to him and tells him the tower has agreed to broadcast his statement. Flight 402 returns to Beirut International Airport. Another terrorist boards the plane. He orders a few children and elderly passengers to leave. He relays a message from a superior, instructing the lead hijacker to fly over Jordan and Syria to read their proclamation. The plane again takes off. But after spending more than 24 hours in the air, the lead hijacker decides to turn back.
He did not feel that they were getting a bang for their buck, so to speak. So the aircraft never went to Jordan and never went to Syria.
The aircraft circles Lebanon for several hours before finally landing in Beirut. Determined to get their message across, the hijackers rig the nose of the aircraft with plastic explosives. At 9 a.m., the lead hijacker calls the tower. He vows that if 20,000 Palestinian refugees are not expelled from Lebanon by 2 o'clock that afternoon, he will kill the remaining hostages. In Beirut, gunmen rigged the cockpit of a hijacked plane with explosives. Aboard are 66 passengers, including 2 United States citizens and 9 crew members. The hijackers tell the tower that they will kill all the hostages if the government does not expel more than 20,000 Palestinians from Lebanon by 2 p.m. FBI Special Agent Tom Hansen.
Without any real notice, the passengers were ordered off the aircraft and instructed to enter into the terminal building.
Inexplicably, their 30-hour nightmare is over. The hijackers place hand grenades around the cabin. With the aircraft emptied and in the presence of international media, the hostage takers deliver one more emphatic statement. U.S. federal law enforcement agencies are determined to catch the hijackers. For the FBI, it is an historic moment. For the first time, they can legally pursue terrorists who have attacked Americans overseas, a power they had only recently acquired. In the early 1980s, Lebanon was a country ravaged by civil war. With the central government in shambles, Christian and Muslim militias clash, fighting for control. Beirut, once considered the Paris of the Middle East, is reduced to rubble. The situation further deteriorates, eventually forcing the U.S. Marines to deploy to Lebanon as part of a multinational peacekeeping force. The violence only escalates. In October of 1983, a suicide bomber detonates a truck full of explosives at the Marine barracks at Beirut International Airport. The blast kills 241 U.S. servicemen. 3 seconds later, a similar bomb destroys the French Army barracks, killing 58. The bombing at the Marine barracks is the single deadliest attack on Americans overseas. Former FBI Assistant Director of the Criminal Investigation Division, Oliver Buck Revell.
The horrendous attack upon the Marine barracks in '83, for a short time, really focused the attention of the American public on terrorism, but it always wandered off very quickly because there was not a belief of there being a sustained level of attack against the United States.
Many Americans are unaware that several radical Shiite Muslim groups have declared a low-intensity war on the U.S. Their goal, to drive Westerners out of Lebanon. The most notorious of these groups is Hezbollah, whom U.S. intelligence agencies suspect is behind the Marine barracks bombing. The following year, terrorism continues to plague the region. Diplomacy has failed. Peacekeeping forces have proven ineffective. And the FBI only has the legal authority to monitor international terrorism. Special Agent Tom Hansen.
We had no real jurisdiction to operate overseas or to prosecute those who committed acts outside the borders of the continental United States.
To give U.S. authorities broader international powers, Congress enacts the Comprehensive Crime Control Act of 1984. This new law allows the FBI to apply existing kidnapping and air piracy laws to crimes committed against American citizens overseas.
So from that point on, any terrorist group who took an American hostage anywhere in the world, including aircraft hijackings, became the subject of an FBI investigation. The hijacking of the Royal Jordanian flight violated the anti-hostage-taking statute that had been passed in 1984 for the very first time, and it involved the FBI then initiating an investigation, even though the plane had never been in the United States and it was not a U.S. carrier. There were Americans on board, they were held hostage, and therefore the statute was violated.
Tom Hansen becomes the lead agent on the case.
The actual investigation regarding the hijacking of Royal Jordanian 402 started off as a basic intelligence effort to gather as much information as possible.
The FBI knows the two most active terrorist groups in Beirut are Hezbollah and the Amal militia, another Shia faction formed during the Civil War.
Here's the plane.
They suspect it is the Amal militia who is responsible for the hijacking.
Here's everybody loading.
They control security at the Beirut airport, giving them access to the plane. Also, the hijackers' anti-Palestinian statements are typical of the group. Former FBI Executive Assistant Director Buck Revell.
There was a dichotomy between the Hezbollah and the Amal, in that the Amal wanted to remove the Palestinians from the south of Lebanon to send them back into Israel or elsewhere, whereas Hezbollah was supportive of the Palestinian movement, particularly the PLO.
Both groups use extreme measures to get their message across. 3 days after the hijacking of Flight 402, 4 Hezbollah gunmen hijacked TWA Flight 847 in Athens and forced the pilot to fly to Beirut.
This was primarily an American flight. There were over 140 passengers on board, many of them American citizens.
The Hezbollah made a number of demands in conjunction with this aircraft hijacking, specifically for the release of certain Hezbollah Shia prisoners, as well as certain Palestinian prisoners. Demands which, of course, the United States had no control over, and of course it was against U.S. policy to make concessions to terrorist organizations.
The hijackers forced the TWA jet to fly back and forth between Beirut and Algiers. At each stop, they release women and children. In Beirut, the terrorists decide to prove they are serious about their demands. They kill U.S. Navy diver Robert Steedham.
They executed him in cold blood. threw him out on the tarmac there at Beirut International Airport, which of course enraged all of us and caused us to rededicate ourselves that this wouldn't stand. We would go after these people as long as it took.
39 hostages remain, all Americans. The hijackers move them off the plane and hold them at several locations around Beirut. President Ronald Reagan reacts.
Terrorists, be on notice. We will fight back against you in Lebanon and elsewhere. We will fight back against your cowardly attacks on American citizens and property.
Authorities consider possible diplomatic strategies.
There were continuous meetings in the sit room at the White House. We were trying to come up with some basis to effect the release of the hostages. This was probably the most stressful circumstance during my 12 years in charge of the terrorism program. We were using every intelligence means available to us. CIA assets, technical means, intelligence from allied services, through diplomatic channels. It was an all-out effort to obtain any and all information about who was holding the hostages, where they were being held, under what circumstances, and of course, any information that would allow us to locate and potentially rescue the hostages.
As U.S. agencies gather intelligence, 39 American lives hang in the balance. June 1985. Hezbollah gunmen hijacked TWA Flight 847 in Athens and forced the pilot to fly to Lebanon. They hold 39 passengers hostage all over Beirut. The U.S. Department of State applies diplomatic pressure, trying to secure the release of the hostages. Former FBI Executive Assistant Director Buck Revell.
We were putting pressure on the Syrians, pressure on the existing Lebanese government. We were using surrogates such as Egypt and Jordan. So it was really an all-out effort to use any and everyone that might have some ability to try and bring pressure on the Hezbollah to release the prisoners.
Finally, President Hafez al-Assad of Syria offers to negotiate with the captors and convinces them to release all 39 hostages. President Ronald Reagan gives voice to the nation's collective sense of relief.
The 39 Americans held hostage for 17 days by terrorists in Lebanon are free, safe, and at this moment on their way to Frankfurt, Germany. They'll be home again soon. This is a moment of joy for them, for their loved ones, and for our nation.
With the hostages safe, U.S. authorities turn their attention to finding the hijackers. FBI agents debrief the hostages of TWA Flight 847. Special Agent Tom Hansen.
Many of the passengers were shown photo spreads of previous suspects in hijackings, kidnappings, to determine whether or not any of these individuals were involved in the TWA incident. Many of the passengers identified the photo that we had of the main hijacker from the Royal Jordanian aircraft.
Hansen learns that the lead hijacker of Royal Jordanian Air Flight 402, a member of the Amal militia, guarded hostages from the TWA hijacking.
They gave accounts of conversations with this individual who admitted that he was one of the Royal Jordanian hijackers and asked them if they had seen the aircraft and basically bragged about his role in that incident.
Investigators have identified a prosecutable subject. But gathering information on a Beirut-based terrorist is difficult at best. At the time, a boundary called the Green Line divides Beirut into the Christian East and the Muslim West. Dwayne Dewey Claridge is a former division chief in the Central Intelligence Agency's Directorate of Operations.
West Beirut was no man's land for Americans, or even for many Lebanese. And therefore, collecting information was extremely difficult, not only for CIA, but also for the friendly Lebanese intelligence services.
But the CIA is relentless. Embedded operatives in Beirut continue interviewing informants. Their persistence pays off. They learn where the Royal Jordanian air hijacking suspect lives. The only problem, U.S. authorities are powerless to go after him.
It just wasn't possible to coordinate with the Lebanese authorities to hand over the main subject. There was no specific government really in control.
Terrorism continues to spread throughout the world. In 1985 alone, there are 812 incidents of international terrorism. 926 people are killed, including 23 Americans.
We had so many acts of terrorism committed against U.S. citizens abroad that the president convened a task force, the Vice President's Task Force on Combating Terrorism, brought in cabinet-level people to examine the law, the policy, and the actions of the United States to best combat terrorism and to define the roles of the various agencies so that it was very clear. And they set up means for interagency coordination.
In January 1986, the task force creates the Operation Subgroup, or OSG.
I'd like to be meeting you somewhere else under different circumstances, but terrorism.
This interagency panel is comprised of officials from the FBI, the CIA, the National Security Agency, the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, and the State Department. Buck Revell represents the FBI.
The OSG had two responsibilities. One, to ensure that appropriate intelligence was disseminated on a full basis. Secondly, to coordinate operations against terrorist targets, whether they be groups or organizations or even terrorist-sponsoring nations.
Representing the CIA on the OSG is Dewey Claridge. Even before the creation of the OSG, Claridge had made recommendations for improving the CIA's counterterrorism operations.
We had to do something very different because terrorism is a transnational phenomenon. What I mean by that is that an operation may be planned by a group in Syria but carried out in Rome. Now, the U.S. government, like all governments, is organized on geographic lines, no matter what agency you're talking about. And it inhibits really getting after the terrorists. To handle that, you would create a center where the center would operate across national boundaries or across the divisional boundaries of CIA. The solution, at least for CIA, was to create the Counterterrorism Center to deal with a transnational problem, both in terms of geography and bureaucratic turf.
The CTC unites operatives from each of the agency's divisions, enabling them to pool intelligence. Dewey Claridge is named chief of the center.
It was a revolution. Never before had CIA ever organized across geographic boundaries or bureaucratic geographic boundaries on anything.
This afternoon,
The U.S. is now in a position to take action against the terrorist threat, and the OSG is at the center of the effort.
We were looking for a target which would do several things for us. One, we wanted to demonstrate to the terrorists in the Middle East that we had the will and the capability of going after them anywhere at any time. Second, we wanted to demonstrate the effectiveness of the new law and to have it tested in the courts. So we were looking for proactive opportunities to essentially put on notice that the United States was not going to be dormant. It was going to be proactive in addressing these problems.
Members of the OSG sift through intelligence on several wanted terrorists, including the hijackers of Royal Jordanian Air Flight 402 and TWA Flight 847. The problem is, none of the potential targets are accessible.
that's kind of a tough place to get into, but I assure you that
For now, all the CIA and the FBI can do is gather information on the wanted terrorists and work to get indictments. Special Agent Tom Hansen,
As most investigations go, there has to be an element of luck, and ours came in June of 1987.
The OSG learns that the Drug Enforcement Agency already has a Lebanese informant working out of Cyprus. Because of his associations, they believe he could help them locate wanted terrorists. In debriefing him, a CA operative learns the informant knows the lead hijacker of Royal Jordanian Air Flight 402. U.S. authorities may finally have the means to capture him. In the 1980s, with the growing threat of violence against Americans abroad, the U.S. government makes international terrorism a top priority. In 1986, the Operation Subgroup, or OSG, learns that a DEA informant knows the lead hijacker of Royal Jordanian Air Flight 402. FBI Special Agent Tom Hansen.
Not only did he know the main hijacker, but they had shared a friendship and an association over a period of approximately 4 years. In fact, indicated that he felt that he could get this person to travel outside of Lebanon and visit him in another country. And this gave us one thing that we hadn't had in the past, and that was accessibility.
Former chief of the CIA's Counterterrorist Center and OSG member Dewey Claridge.
By getting our hands on him and bringing him back to the States and put him on trial, we would be signaling to the terrorists for the first time that we had changed our method of operation and we were on the offensive.
The informant is cooperating, but he has a few concerns. Former FBI Executive Assistant Buck Revell.
He wanted a significant reward and relocation of himself and his family to the United States under the Witness Protection Program. We felt in the interagency negotiations that this was a reasonable request. He certainly would be at risk if he and his family stayed in Lebanon, so we obtained authority to do that.
In Cyprus, the informant tells a CIA operative that the hijacker has left the Amal militia.
The hijacker, in fact, got into the drug business. He pursued this in Europe and other parts of the Mediterranean, so was somewhat actively involved in transportation and sale of narcotics.
He told us that the lead hijacker was interested in doing drug deals, that he had been involved in the past in certain drug operations, and he thought that he could be enticed to leave Lebanon, which was an important issue, and go to Cyprus or elsewhere where he would be vulnerable for arrest on our charges.
The OSG now believes the Royal Jordanian Air hijacker is within reach. With the informant's cooperation, the CIA plants listening devices in his home to record his conversations with the hijacker.
The determination was for him to go back and say, I know of a major international drug dealer who is looking to do an operation. You could bring the drugs in through Iran into Lebanon and then set up an operation to supply this drug dealer, and it would be very lucrative.
The plan calls for the informant to set up a meeting outside Lebanon between the hijacker and an imaginary drug dealer named Joseph. The OSG decides the meeting will take place on a yacht in international waters.
We did not want any operation that we undertook to involve violations of the sovereignty of another nation.
The OSG considers whether the U.S. military or the FBI should make the arrest.
Good news for you. She just handed me a memo.
Former commander of the FBI's hostage rescue team, Special Agent David Woody Johnson.
The basic plan was that any counterterrorism operation occurred outside the United States or its territories would be handled by the military. Anything that occurred inside the United States or its territories, HRT would handle. And so now we got a situation where we may want to go over and grab a guy overseas. Do you use the military teams or do you use HRT? And that had to have been debated
at the Attorney General, Department of Defense level, and they finally described it as an arrest. So we're going to use the hostage rescue team in spite of the fact that we're going to do it overseas.
They choose the HRT because the FBI has arrest powers and the military does not. Members of the HRT are law enforcement officers trained to do hostage rescue and testify in a U.S. court of law.
The idea was to try to take him alive and bring him back here and prosecute him. So I think the idea was to make a bigger political statement.
We wanted to make sure that the terrorist groups and organizations, particularly terrorist sponsoring nations, knew that the United States had both legal authority and the will to carry out whatever operations were necessary. And we knew that it had to be done with interagency cooperation. This operation took a very long time to plan. We didn't want to violate the sovereignty of another nation. We did not want to undertake this and not succeed. That would send exactly the wrong message.
The plan is ready to implement. The final hurdle is obtaining the president's approval.
As I was going to Washington National Airport to catch a commercial flight under just a regular passport to Athens, I received a telephone call in the Bureau vehicle from Ed Meese, the Attorney General. And he advised me, he said, "Buck, I just briefed President Reagan. It's a go. Good luck, and I'll talk to you on the other end."
Okay, Ed, I'll keep you posted.
Before launching the mission, the FBI solidifies their case.
We had to recontact the witnesses that we had previously interviewed and determine whether or not we could get a commitment from them that they would come to the United States and testify.
Several passengers and crew of Flight 402 agree to take the stand if necessary. The government now has a prosecutable case. The plan, dubbed Operation Goldenrod, is set into motion. In the mid-1980s, the U.S. Congress acts to give federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies broader powers to battle the growing threat of international terrorism. September 1987. Operation Goldenrod is a go. The FBI, the CIA, and the U.S. Navy deploy assets for the arrest of the Royal Jordanian air hijacker. FBI coordinates their portion of the operation from a command center aboard the USS Butte, positioned in international waters 15 miles off the coast of Cyprus. Special Agent Woody Johnson is the commander of the FBI's hostage rescue team.
The crew was told that they were just waiting for technical support to come out on the ship to help them correct some problems. We came off carrying gun cases and other things, and we have some pretty big agents, and they don't look like normal technicians, and those don't look like normal, technical boxes. I remember having one of these young sailors say something the other way by, said, "Technicians, right?"
In Greece, HRT member Special Agent Don Glasser rents the yacht where the arrest will take place.
What was chosen because it would blend in. It wouldn't attract any attention. We made some changes to it. We actually put a satellite navigation system in and making some adjustments to that and actually put a Loran on it. And it's a electronic navigation equipment.
In the port town of Limassol, Cyprus, Dewey Claridge and the CIA team set up a command post in a hotel room.
We had a communications officer with us and a lot of aluminum trunks of equipment, which were passed off as photographic gear. And we had satellite communications back to Washington, to EUCOM at Stuttgart, that's the U.S. military command at Stuttgart, And of course, we had communications with the Butte, with the yacht, and headquarters was patching our communications through to the FBI headquarters, the White House, and whoever else. Everybody wanted to be in on this, know what was going on.
Under sail off the coast of Greece, the FBI arrest team alters the appearance of the yacht to protect the owner's identity.
We changed the flag from a Grecian flag to Italian flag. We changed the home port and the name on the hull, and we turned the life preservers all around, which had the name of the boat on it.
Former FBI Executive Assistant Director Buck Revell oversees the Bureau's command center on the USS Butte.
We had emergency response team. We had a helicopter turning up on the deck, on the aft deck, ready to immediately respond with automatic weapons and other capabilities to defend against any attempt by pirates or terrorist groups to intercede in the operation. Our concerns over the actual execution were that we could get him to the location in international waters to execute the arrest, but also that we could secure that arrest and that we could keep it from becoming an international incident. In these type circumstances, you never know exactly what you're going to be faced with. We were dealing with a very fluid situation in Lebanon. We had to have the CIA operations in place in Cyprus. We had to have the FBI operations in place on board the yacht, which was the intercept vessel, and our command and control and emergency response on board the USS Butte, which was going to have to stay in international waters but be very close by. And since we couldn't control the exact timetable, it had to be very flexible.
The FBI and the CIA are ready. CIA operatives tell the informant to call the hijacker in Beirut and tell him everything is in place. He needs to come to Cyprus now to meet the fictitious drug dealer, Joseph.
The hijacker bought into this idea of coming to Cyprus to meet Joseph, who we basically manufactured as a big drug person. Hijacking aircraft doesn't really make you much money, if any. But and so he was looking to make some money.
The hijacker arrives at the informant's home, where he will stay until the operation begins.
We made sure that not only did he throw money around quite lavishly when he brought the hijacker over to Cyprus, but he had showed him a suitcase full of money that certainly impressed the hijacker. He got the hijacker to state on tape that he indeed was the chief hijacker of the Jordanian aircraft. This is something Justice Department wanted very much. The good news was that the target, the hijacker, was on Cyprus on schedule. But the bad news was that we had learned that the Cypriot police were looking for him because somehow he had gotten on a watch list of undesirables.
Our nephew was running around Cyprus with a warrant on him.
Operatives cannot afford to have local police arrest the hijacker in the middle of the operation. The CIA decides to have the informant move himself and the hijacker into the same hotel where they have the command center set up.
I felt we could take that risk because it was a weekend. And it was unlikely that the police would energize themselves to run around, particularly to a high-class hotel and a new one at that, searching for this fellow.
On Sunday morning, the informant tells the hijacker it's time to meet Joseph. He explains that since the drug dealer can't come to Cyprus, they need to meet him aboard his yacht. The informant's brother will take them to him in his boat.
We had to have, quote, American eyes, U.S. eyes on the target, on the hijacker, when he boarded the boat, to be able to tell Washington with absolute certainty that it was the target who was boarding the boat. And so one of our officers was located on the pier.
Special Agent Tom Hansen.
The boat departed with a cooperating witness and the main subject on time and headed out towards the yacht.
Copy that. They're away.
We informed everybody on the communications net of that fact and that the operation was underway. We asked for Washington to begin to implement the extraction of his relatives and near relatives, sisters, brothers, and children from various places around the Middle East, which had been part of the deal.
Yeah. All right.
We had a picket boat system in place to act as guideposts for the cooperating witness to navigate from.
FBI's hostage rescue team commander, Special Agent Woody Johnson.
My job is to worry about the people that are working for me, and it's a concern if this is a double cross. Have they set us up? Is he, going along with this thing, but they're sitting in a boat somewhere waiting on us, and then they're going to come charging in on us on the yacht, and we're going to end up in a fight on the water.
For now, all the FBI can do is wait. Undercover FBI agents await the arrival of the Royal Jordanian Air hijacker in international waters 12 miles off the coast of Cyprus. FBI's hostage rescue team commander, Special Agent Woody Johnson.
We pre-positioned the HRT guys on the deck, openly there with the appearance that we're bodyguards for the drug dealer.
Get that fender ready to go over.
Also on deck are 2 female FBI agents to act as diversions and help put the hijacker at ease.
The rest of us were secreted down below deck with a sniper in the pilot house in the event somebody shows up that we didn't expect. Or that these guys suddenly jump up and have got weapons and start shooting. We can defend ourselves.
Special Agent Don Glasser.
Everything looked normal on our boat. The female agents were waving to him, beckoning him to come aboard the boat.
I keep thinking this seems to be too easy. Is this guy, have they set us up?
The undercover agent spoke to them in Arabic, told them that the boss was down below in the boat taking a shower and be up shortly. We said, well, the owner's going to want him to be searched for weapons. It would only take a second. We apologized for that, but that was business. And he didn't resist that. So the other agent patted him down, gave him a quick pat down for weapons, didn't find anything on him.
Clean. Go downstairs.
The other agent escorted him back to the cockpit area where he nodded to me, which was the signal that we'd execute the arrest. The HRT operators came up from the cabin. He was very surprised. I'm not sure who he thought we were. He was absolutely terrified. Did not resist us. We put leg irons on him and we called the ship.
Agents send word of the successful arrest.
All right. We're out of here.
At that point, we knew that we'd done what we were supposed to do, deliver the target to the Bureau, and so we closed down the command post very rapidly, checked out of the hotel.
As soon as the arrest was made, we launched a boat from the Butte.
Butte is 900-foot ship, so we're talking big. Comes up over the horizon, and we came up alongside of it. And the captain was playing patriotic music over the loudspeaker. You could hear it. And he was flying a huge American flag off the back of it. At that point, he's telling the crew what's going on. He said, we're striking back, and you had the opportunity to be a part of it. I tell you, one of the things that was really a thrill and actually kind of choked me up is when we came up on the deck. There were probably 200-300 of the crew were up on the deck, and they were cheering and clapping. And it just really was kind of an emotional experience.
The Butte immediately headed west in the Mediterranean to link up with the aircraft carrier USS Saratoga.
Agents interview the hijacker aboard the Butte.
The debriefing of the terrorist was very helpful to the U.S. Intelligence community and getting an overall appreciation and understanding of the dynamics of circumstances in South Lebanon, the relationship between the Amal and the Hezbollah and the Lebanese government, and also the involvement of both Syria and Iran in that area.
We transported him to the Saratoga aboard military helicopter.
From there, FBI agents transfer the hijacker to an S-3 Viking for the long trip to the United States.
During its trip back to Washington, D.C., it had to perform 2 in-air refuelings. Once the flight was completed, it represented the longest continuous flight from the deck of a U.S. carrier that the military had ever performed.
After a 13-hour flight, the S-3 lands at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. The Flight 402 hijacker is immediately taken to Washington, D.C. for arraignment. In 1989, the hijacker is tried, convicted, and sentenced to 30 years in prison for conspiracy, air piracy, and hostage-taking.
The arrest and prosecution was the first instance of U.S. law bringing an individual into custody overseas, bringing him to the United States, and prosecuting him in federal court for a crime in which neither he nor the victim nor the act or circumstance ever touched U.S. territory. It was our hope that by carrying out such an audacious act that we would send a very strong signal to the terrorists that the game had changed, that we would no longer be essentially passive, but we'd be proactive in pursuing them across the entire world if necessary.
Operation Goldenrod was the first success of its kind in the U.S. government's new war on terrorism.